Greetings! It is I, Tantus Narvan Dracovin, Lord Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue our discussion on 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, 5th edition D&D. So let's start just diving back into it. We've been going over rules in combat. Today I'm going to go over some more of them. So let's start by talking about damage. So, damage and healing, really is what I'm going to be talking about. Now, any kind of damage you take, it's not permanent. You can heal it. The most basic way of healing it is through rest, whether through a short rest or a long rest. I did talk about what they do to recover your hit points before. Now, the other way of getting hit points back is through magical means. This would be something like magical healing. This would be through like a spell or a potion. Now, this is an instantaneous effect. It doesn't take any time. Now, any sort of healing you get, regardless of whatever type it is, it cannot put you above your maximum HP. So whatever your maximum is, that is the maximum you can ever heal up. So if I'm only down 2 damage and some kind of spell affects me and it would heal 5 damage, I'm not going to have 3 extra hit points. I'm just going to get the 2 I need, and that's it. So what happens when I hit 0 hit points? Well, first off, when you hit 0 hit points, the first thing you're going to look at is excess damage. So if someone did a lot of damage to me, dropped me to 0, if the remaining damage that would be hitting me exceeds my maximum hit points, I die instantaneously. So let's say I have 10 hit points maximum. I'm a pretty low level character. I'm like a first level character. I have 10 hit points maximum, and someone hits me for 20. Not only would it drop me, but since it equals or exceeds my maximum hit points of 10, the remaining damage, which is 10, I die. So something really big could kill you even with that one blow. Now let's say you survived it. You're at 0. Now you're going to be at 0 and you're going to go unconscious. Now you're going to be unconscious until something heals you. As soon as you gain any sort of health, whether through natural healing, whether through magic, whatever, you go conscious right away. So as soon as you go from 0 hit points to 1, conscious. So I'm unconscious, I'm at 0, it's the beginning of my turn. I have to make a death saving throw. This is a special kind of saving throw. Now, you're going to keep track of your death saving throws. So what do I mean by this? Well, I roll a d20. It's a saving throw like any other. I don't add anything to it. If I roll a 10 or higher, I've succeeded. 9 or less, failed. I keep track of my successes and failures. If I hit 3 successes, I stabilize. I'll explain that in a minute. If I hit 3 failures, I die. So you have more than a 50-50 chance of surviving, just not a great one. Now, there are other things. If I roll a 1 on my death save, I get 2 failures. So I did really bad with that 1 and got 2 failures. On the other hand, if I roll a 20, I actually heal 1 hit point, and I'm conscious again. So a 20 will get you right back up and into the battle. On the other hand, a 1 gets you really close to death really fast. Now, maybe I'm still not out of trouble. If I take damage when I'm unconscious and dying, I automatically get a failure tick to my death save failures. Meaning, like, if I already had 1 death save and something hits me and deals me damage, without rolling, I get an extra 1. So I might only have 2 turns to live if I'm failing death saves. Now it gets worse if someone criticals you. You get 2. So I've already failed a death save and someone criticals me, I'm dead. I only had 1 roll in my turn, let's say I rolled and failed, and someone comes up and criticals me, I'm out of the battle, I'm dead, I'm gone. Now similar to when you dropped down into 0, any excess damage, if it equaled your hit points, you die. If an attack deals equal to your maximum hit points to you when you're down, regardless if it's a critical or not, it kills you. So I went unconscious, I only have 10 hit points, something dealt me 10 hit points, if something deals me another hit of 10 hit points, I would die right then and there. Now, rolling isn't the only way, or getting healing. If one of your friends who doesn't have healing magic wants to help you out, they can. They can make a wisdom medicine check, DC 10, and on success, you're stabilized. So let's talk about what stabilization is now. Stabilized means you're not dying, you don't have to make death saves, you're just unconscious and sitting there. Now, if you are unattended and not helped after you become stable, regardless if you made your saves on your own, someone made a DC 10 wisdom medicine check, you would recover in 1d4 hours, you would heal a hit point. So if left on your own and you've been stabilized, you will get back up eventually if nothing finds you and decides that you're a free meal. So let's talk about villains and enemies when they go to 0. Now, most monsters, when they go to 0, they die instantaneously. They're just dead. On the other hand, if you're fighting some kind of villain or an NPC, more than likely they are going to have similar to you as a character go to 0 and be dying instead of just dying out, being dead right away. So, you know, a monster, if I'm fighting like a dragon or something, more than likely I'm going to kill it when I hit 0. Well, if I'm fighting like, for whatever reason, I get into a match with like a guy from town and I drop him, he'll be dying instead. Now, you actually have an option of keeping someone alive and only knocking them out. This only applies to someone doing melee attacks. As a melee attack, if I would drop something, even a monster, whatever it is, to 0, I have the option at the time I am dealing that damage to only knock out the target. I'm basically saying I'm not going for the killing blow, I'm trying to knock them unconscious. They would be at 0, but they would be stable on the ground unconscious. I basically, like, you know, I hit that guy and I just draw my sword back just enough that I'm not getting that killing blow into their heart. I'm only like stabbing them in the shoulder so they drop down. Granted, they're, you know, not in the greatest condition because you just beat the crap out of them, but they are alive. Now, you can get temporary hit points from special abilities or spells. These act as a buffer to your hit points. When you gain temporary hit points, any damage that comes to you takes off from these temporary hit points first, and any remaining is applied to your normal hit points. Now, with temporary hit points, you can exceed your normal maximum. So if my maximum, again, is 10, I could have 10 temporary hit points. I effectively would have 20 damage I could take before I would drop. The first 10 would be the buffer from temporary hit points. No kind of healing or rest regains temporary hit points. The ability which granted it would have to grant it again. Now, unless otherwise stated, temporary hit points last until you take a long rest. So now I want to talk about mounted combat. So you can use anything that's at least one size category larger than you as a mount. Now, if I'm using a mount, I can either mount it or dismount it using half of my normal speed. Now, if your mount would suffer forced movement, meaning it would be pushed around, then you would have to make a dex save or fall off. Similarly, if your mount is being dropped prone, you can make a reaction to basically quickly dismount it and not be knocked prone with it, or you can choose to go along with it if you want to use your reaction for something else, or if you don't have a reaction because you already used it, boom, you're just down with it. Now on your turn, you can either try to control your mount or you can let it act independently. You can only control a mount that's trained to. In the actions you can do is you can have it dodge, dash, or disengage. Otherwise, your mount's going to do whatever it feels like doing and may not react well to combat, especially if it's one that's not trained to go into battle. So now I want to finish up by talking about underwater combat. Now, if you're fighting underwater, depending on what type of attack it is, makes a difference. If I'm using melee, and this is all assuming, if I'm using melee attacks and I don't have a swim speed, I get disadvantage. Now, there are some exceptions. There's a list of weapons in the book that will tell you you will not get disadvantage for fighting with melee underwater. Now, ranged attacks, on the other hand, you can only fire them within the normal range. Beyond that is an automatic miss. So the normal range, the first range your weapon has, is the only one they can fire in underwater. And they too will have disadvantage, unless again there is a list that it mentions a couple of type of range attacks that you can do underwater without disadvantage. They still can only fire within that normal range. Now, an advantage that everyone gets when fighting in the water is that they get resistance to fire. So that's everything I wanted to go over today. I talked about healing, the damage you're taking. I talked about the rules about dying and surviving death. I went into mounted combat and I talked a little bit about that. I talked a little about underwater combat. If you have any questions, comments, anything you want to say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Social Great Friends, show support for the channel and the Empire. Please subscribe if you already haven't. We're always looking for more members, more citizens. And please share this video. If you know anyone that would learn anything from it or just enjoy watching it, please share it with them. And until the next time, I bid you farewell.